So many people have expressed that the Nothing Phone 2 is expensive. Honestly, I thought so too in the beginning. I mean, it is just the second Nothing phone, so why the 50% hike in price? It's actually pretty simple. The Nothing Phone 2, it has a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chip, a really powerful flagship level chip. Now if you look at some other popular phones that have this chip, you'll realize most of them cost more than the Nothing Phone 2. Even if you just compare the ones that are cheaper, you're just left with, let's say, the Neo 7 Pro and the OnePlus 11R. But then they don't have the transparent design, the glyph interface, and frankly, they don't really have any standout feature. And then by just spending a couple of extra bucks, you can get a really uniquely designed phone with some features that are really different. But before I talk about all of those different features, I do want to address a couple of design issues with this phone. Look, let's face it, there is no other phone that quite looks as different as the Nothing Phone 2. It looks really good. You've got glass front and back with Gorilla Glass protection. It's also IP54 rated for splash and dust resistance, so it's durable to some extent. I love the flat surface. I really like the thick rectangular edges, and the wide flat buttons are great. The weight is quite even and it doesn't feel heavy at all for a phone with a big display. But wait, design is more than just how things look. It's also about the usability of the phone. And the first thing is to do with the width of the phone. Look, I may have smaller than average hands, but I've used a lot of phones and this feels really wide. Think about this. This is actually wider than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and that is a wide phone. So just something to keep in mind. The second thing is that this is glass. It is going to lose shine over time. It's going to get scratches and it's going to start looking not so good. And so what are you going to do? You're going to put a case on this? Again, just something to think about. Third, the fingerprint sensor is a bit too close to the edge. Ideally, it should have been placed more naturally right here, but just something you'll have to get used to it. Though it works really fast, so no issues. Fourth, and this is a little weird. If you bought this phone in India, then you have to use an Indian SIM card to be even able to set up the device. Otherwise, it's just a brick. So, Indian customers only. And fifth, it still has a USB 2.0 port. A little slow for 2023 and for that price tag, but okay. See guys, none of these design issues are deal breakers, but just a couple of things I thought you guys should know. But let's talk about the good stuff, the stuff that really makes this phone different from all other Android smartphones out there. Look, it's running Nothing OS 2.0 on Android 13, but there are certain things about Nothing OS that really makes it like no other Android phone, and in a good way. I mean, you get functionalities and customization that Android does not offer natively. For example, on the lock screen, you can place some really useful widgets, and you've got some native widgets that you could choose from and fill in the grid here. But you know who else introduced this? iPhone with their lock screen widgets. And so basically Nothing took the good stuff from iOS and gave it to you on Android. Again, no other Android phone has this. And by the way, these widgets adapt to the always-on display. Then you could also customize folders in different ways and give it its own look by selecting from all of these different options. You could increase the size of specific app icons on the home screen and still have it look very coordinated with other round widgets that are of similar size. You could place widgets for most system-based actions right up on the home screen, which I think is super convenient. And the fact it's got such a strong flavor of Nothing design aesthetic throughout the UI of the phone, be it the home screen widgets, the volume bar, the always-on display widgets, the brightness bar, and even its very own weather app. And even the sound effects throughout the UI just adds to that experience. Just hear it out. And see, that's what I'm talking about. It is this uniqueness in terms of design aesthetics, in terms of OS experience, that you will just not get on any other phone in this price segment, even if it offers the same flagship chip. Now, sure, you can get yourself third-party launchers like Nova Launcher, you could get KWGT widgets, you could get icon packs, and you can go through that whole shebang to get somewhat of this experience, but because it's not going to be deep-rooted in the experience, it's just not going to be the same. And wait, there's plenty of other stuff I haven't even talked about. Like you can just long press the torch to just turn on the glyph lights as a soft light. The glyph interface now has this progress meter light. It indicates the volume levels as you change them. It tells you how long until the timer is going to end, or how long before your Uber or your Zomato order arrives. The essential glyph light, it remains lit for notifications from apps that you feel are important. The battery charging glyph is also quite neat. Now, the bad news is that all of this will look very cool to you in the beginning, and over time, you actually may get immune to all of this. But the good news is that people around you will still find it cool. Some weird things too. The built-in screen recorder. It doesn't record at high resolution, and there's no option for you to change that. Next, the haptics on the keyboard are really strong, and so strong that you could almost hear them, right? And there's no way for me to be able to control this. It's either on or it's completely off. The auto rotation sensitivity is also very weird. I mean, it rotates so quickly even when I really don't want it to. And that I think is something that they really need to fix with like a software update or something. Also, they've created a lot of this hype around the Glyph Composer. First, it's an app that you need to download from the Play Store, and second, you need to uninstall it, because unless you're some genius musician who can create a melody out of, robotic tones, it's a complete waste of time. And lastly, and very important, you will get 3 years of Android upgrades and 4 years of security updates, which I think is pretty good. So, with this phone, you're at least sorted for the next 3 to 4 years. Now guys, I'm not going to talk a lot about the performance because, as I said, it features last year's flagship chip, the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. So the performance on this is very good. So there are 3 variants that you can buy from, and you can just buy basis how much storage you need because there is no expandable storage. Now the phone runs insanely smooth. I mean, the animations are some of the finest that I've seen across a lot of Android smartphones, and you're going to love it. And obviously, very smooth gaming, no major heating, it's just fine. Also, speaking of performance, the entire power delivery system on the Nothing Phone 2 has been upgraded from the Nothing Phone 1. Battery capacity has gone up from 4500 to 4700 mAh. Charging goes from 30 watts to 45 watts, so from 0 to full in under 1 hour. And given that this is now on a more power efficient chip, you do get more battery per day now as compared to what Nothing Phone 1 was offering. But mind you, nothing more than a full day's battery, okay? By the end of the night, you'll be through with it. Oh, and by the way, it does support wireless charging at 15 watts, so just in case you do use wireless charging. Anyway, now let's talk about the cameras. So it's still a 50 megapixel camera, but this time they've upgraded the sensor to the Sony IMX890. You also get a 50 megapixel ultra-wide lens and a 32 megapixel front-facing camera. By the way, the camera is set to default at 12 megapixel, but you can switch to 50 megapixel if you want. Let's go ahead and check out some samples in the normal default 12 megapixel mode as you see here. If you're glancing real quick, they look quite nice, and if you like high contrast, saturated, punchy photos, I guess this is a pretty good camera system for that. However, for me personally, this has too much contrast. The colors are too bold, the blacks or the shadows are crushed, and the dynamic range could definitely be better. And I do think the details are on the lower side despite ample light around. I actually quite preferred the picture quality indoors. The colors were better, the dynamic range was better, and just the overall appeal is nicer. Even the low light photos were quite nice, as long as there is some ambient lighting around. However, there were times when the camera did pick up quite a bit of noise, especially in the sky area. Especially in this photo, you'd see that while the subject looks absolutely fantastic, the sky is absolutely ruined. Now here are primary and ultra-wide pictures placed side by side. I can't help but notice that, firstly, the ultra-wide really distorts the picture. It does, however, have slightly better dynamic range, though the white balance differs vastly from the primary camera and has this extremely cold blue tone to it, which can sometimes really make your photos look bad. In portrait mode, most of the times I got decent shots, good edge detection, good details. However, there were times when it didn't go too well. For example, in here, the gingerbread cat should have been in focus, but it's not. So it didn't quite identify and understand the object too well. In this one too, the fire hydrant should have been completely in focus and sharp, but it's not. And in here, it didn't even understand what to focus on. And let's talk about selfies. So here are some shots that I thought were well taken. But this one, for example, if you see, it's a bit too magenta. And then in low light, just take a look at what happened here with the white balance. Completely thrown off and so yellow. And this is when the light around me wasn't even yellow. Let me show to you. Here's a selfie in portrait mode next to the same light, which as you can see is quite white. And the white balance here is better. So God knows why these photos turned out so yellow. And even in portrait selfie mode, this is probably the best one I got. Even this one, a bit dramatic, but I like it. But then look at this. Edge detection near my right ear, not cool. Though most of the times, it was fine. Now there are some other modes that you can see here. There's also an expert mode, so you can change all of these attributes and take pictures. You've got a raw mode that you can enable if you want. And within video, you can shoot up to 4K at up to 60 FPS and have the option to switch to 30. And here are some other video options that you get, but let's take a look at the sample. So here's a 4K video that I shot using the primary camera. All I can say is it's just okay. I mean, I still don't like how punchy and contrasty this is. The shadows are definitely crushed. The colors are too vibrant. So it's not natural, but if you like this tone, then sure, you would like this too. The optical image stabilization works quite well. And I'm walking and it's not as wobbly. So that actually is good. But overall video quality, I would just say it's about 6 on 10. So yeah, all in all, I think this is a great looking phone. They've really upgraded the experience with... So guys, overall, I think this is a great looking phone. I mean, they've really upgraded the experience with Nothing OS 2.0. You've got the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chip that really adds to the power and performance. And you get Android upgrades all the way up until Android 16. And guys, on top of all of this is truly a head turner because once you keep it on the table, people around you are going to ask you, what phone is that? And so it's really much of a conversation starter. But then it does come with its own flaws, like decent cameras, nothing great. It is the glass that actually brings out that whole design, right? And over time, it's going to lose its shine, it's going to have scratches, and so it might throw that design out for a toss. And even the novelty of this phone, because of which you actually bought it, it's going to disappear over time. And so you'll pretty much be just left with the phone. And even for the glyph interface, while a lot of you may find it very useful, but for someone like me, over time, I know for a fact I'm just going to forget about it unless nothing really brings a very useful purpose to it with a software update or something. Alright, that's it guys about the Nothing Phone 2. If you guys have any questions about the phone, make sure to drop them in the comment section. And as always, if you found this video helpful, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification icon, and mark all. Really helps the channel grow. I'll see you guys in the next one.